Church to Sid's visitor. Sir, I know that trying to drown myself in the toilet was stupid, but it's the only way I can get any attention here. Couldn't you just have asked a guard? I never come in contact with any guards. All I see are trustees. They bring me food, clean clothing, Vaseline, and Depends. Why didn't you talk to them? They shove it in through the slot and are gone before I can say anything. How long has this been going on? Except for the visitor I had a couple of weeks ago, I have had no human contact since I've been here. You're not in solitary, you're in a cell block. How do you not have any contact? There's nobody in any of the other cells. I can't believe that. We are letting people out because of overcrowding, and we have an empty cell block reserved for one inmate. That's what I just told you. And you never see any guards? They use a TV camera. When I get dehydrated and pass out, I lay on the floor for hours before anyone comes to investigate. But you had a visitor. Yeah, the first ever. Look, Mr. Warden, I have been in the system on and off for 27 years. I know that I'm going to die here. I know that I truly deserve to be here. People on the outside are happy to have me here. Every time I have been here, I have made myself unwelcome by being a total fuck up. It's a miracle that I am alive. The guards should have killed me years ago. I deserve it. Hell, I can't even kill myself. The people here would be glad if I did. That includes both the guards and the other inmates. Yes, I've read your record. You've done everything on the outside except capital felony murder. You have never been outside for more than a year since you were 16. You have put 4 guards on disability and seriously injured 16 other inmates. You have done a total of 7 years in segregation and 3 in the hole. How am I supposed to believe that you have turned over a new leaf and want to redeem yourself? I never had a visitor before. Never. Just an occasional public defender. No family. I ran away for the last time when I was 12. My asshole was sore. No friends. Think about it, sir. I spent 4 years in juvie until I got nailed for strong arm robbery 2 days after I was released to a foster home. How am I to know that this isn't a scam to get something from us? The visitor is the person that caused me to be a null. A null? Yeah, no sexual organs at all. Yeah, I heard about your, condition. I had it coming. Why did she come to visit you? She wanted to apologize. She wanted me to forgive her. Did you? She forgave me for raping her and leaving her naked and unconscious in the middle of a public park. She was one of your victims? Yeah, from the time before last that I was on the outside. 2 months later, I got caught in the middle of a home invasion. Why are you in here for that? There was a kilo of coke on the coffee table when they came to arrest me. His shotgun went off in the struggle, and a neighbor called the cops. I skated on a technicality and only spent a year and a half in jail for pretrial confinement. Hell, I should be dead. With your record, you got caught in a home invasion. And got off? I am being kept alive for some reason. Hell, I've lost count of the times I've tried to kill myself. And you forgave her. Look, sir, she did this to me because of what I did to her. I'm 3 times her size. I don't even remember when I did it to her. I did it to a lot of women over the years. Until she showed up, I never even felt guilty about it. Then I realized that until I make up for at least some of what I have done, I can't even die. Face it, sir, my life is truly hell. I can't stand for more than 5 minutes or I get dehydrated. I can't sit because the insides of my legs and my ass are too sore. There is no position where I'm comfortable. I leak, so I have to have a plastic-coated mattress and no bedding. I have a constant headache, and I have lost almost half my body weight. On top of it all, I smell bad, so nobody wants to be around me. I brought this all on myself. All I can do is act as a warning to others. I owe it to everybody. Look, there isn't much I can do in the system that will improve your situation. I don't think that there's anything anybody can do. I can't allow you to kill yourself any more than I can allow anybody else to kill you. You're right about dying here. It's going to happen. I can't help the medical situation or the smell. I'm going to try to find a program for you, but if you screw it up, you will spend the rest of your life in the hole. The walk back to his cell exhausted Sid. His depend was leaking and digestive juices were pooling inside his shoes. Worse yet, He had a whole day wait for his next shower. He got showers 3 times a week. For a normal inmate, that was fine, but with his special needs, it was very hard to clean up after leaks, and this leak was both bad and anticipated. Counting travel time and the time in the office, he had been vertical for 2.5 hours, so the entire contents of his alimentary tract was in the depend. It took him half an hour to clean himself from the leak and another 15 minutes to clean up the mess on the floor from having the depend off to clean himself up. He fell into his bunk and went violently to sleep. If Sid's waking world was hell, there was no temporal or biblical description of his dreams. Since Marjorie's visit, they happened more frequently and more vividly. He was always 5 or 6 years old and back home in Memphis. His pants were gone, and he had blood on the insides of both of his legs, and he was crying to his mother about the last session with dear old dad in the living room. She was crying too, but wouldn't pick him up or hold him or even clean off the blood. She had a large red handprint on the side of her face. This was the tail end of the dream. This was after being beaten and sodomized and being called a worthless piece of shit that was alive only because dear old dad couldn't figure a failure-proof way of disposing of a child's body. Dear old dad had left, and his mother was staring blankly into space, crying quietly. Anger, shame, revulsion, and dread filled his soul as he jerked awake. He was safe here in prison. The last person that tried to sodomize him here was also the first. He was still drooling in a convalescent home, mentally incapable of ever sodomizing anyone else again. 3 of the 4 guards that pulled Sid off the other inmate had permanent scars from the encounter. Sid still had a lump on his nose and a distorted eye socket. Nobody ever tried anything else on Sid. He lay on his bunk and reflected on the last couple of weeks. His meeting with Marjorie had awakened things inside him. Some of them he had buried intentionally, and some of them he had never experienced before. It was the first truly civil meeting he had ever had with a woman. There was no fear nor anger from neither him nor her. They just talked. She was sympathetic toward him, not like the many social workers from his past, but human being to human being. There was no agenda or hidden meaning to the conversation. It was a sharing of past experience. She told him what she had done to him and expressed regret at what she had done. She brought up their encounter in the past and forgave him for it. She told him about her anger and pain over years and the feeling of shame and worthlessness the experience caused and what she had done to others and her regrets about that. Here and there, an occasional tear was shed as she told her tale. He could tell it was hard for her to do it. He had casually taken something irreplaceable from her and destroyed it. He had done it without even really thinking about it or really remembering it. Then, while he was trying to put everything into logical places, she forgave him for what he had done to her. To her, he wasn't the monster everyone else saw, but another suffering human being. She asked him to forgive her. She, who had maimed and disfigured him and made him totally dependent on the state of Tennessee Department of Corrections. She who reduced his gender to marks on a piece of paper. She who cared about him as a human being, something even his parents failed to do. She whose life was turned upside down by his irrational act of rage. She who forgave him for it and all it meant to the world, except for one chance collision, a stranger, she forgave him. It shocked him to the center of his being. She did it without drama, without ceremony, just one person to another. She collected a portion of the vast debt that he owed countless women over a period of years. It was a justified collection. He reconciled instantly to it because he knew he had it coming multiple times over. In doing so, she represented all the women he damaged over the years, and as their representative, she forgave him. He started to cry for the first time since he was a small boy and his mother couldn't or wouldn't help him or get him out of there. Between sobs, he forgave her. The guards led him back to his cell and locked the door behind him. As he cleaned himself from the half hour in a semi-vertical position, he tried to rationalize it all. All his life, he was the person that wasn't worth the trouble of killing, forgiven by a stranger that he had preyed upon. He tried to drown himself in the toilet. He forced to use Depends into the trap and held the button down until it filled to the top. He stuck his head in as far as he could and inhaled. He woke up 3 hours later on his side on the floor beside the toilet. His chest hurt. He had a terrible taste in his mouth and a big bump on his head. He had failed again. He knew that the guards had seen it. There were two cameras pointing into his cell. He crawled to his bunk and climbed on. He needed to talk to someone. For the first time in his life, he had worth. Church 3, first day of school. It was Maryanne's first day of school. Over the summer, the Carter family had moved down from the rocky top of North Carolina to Sterling Forks. Two successive corn crop failures made it necessary for her daddy to find legitimate work in the only trade he knew, making whiskey. For generations, the Carters had been growing corn in about 20 acres of holler in red pines, about 70 miles from the only town of any size around, and distilling it into sour mash whiskey. It was hard work, as the corn was grown without the benefit of modern farming methods and processed the same way as the Carters processed it since the early 1700s. It was grueling physical labor that tolerated no failures. There had to first be enough corn to grind into cornmeal and hominy, too. The store in town was a twice-a-year trek. There was no store in Red Pines, just a post office and retired peddler who liked the isolation of Red Pines. Years ago, there had been a town and a sawmill, but the remoteness of the area and the advent of artificial materials for small hardwood items had ended that enterprise, leaving the town with only 10 inhabitants, all but 2 of them being Carters. The red pine algaid was the death knell for the sawmill. The red pine was a versatile, fast-growing tree that hardened as it seasoned. It was slow to rot and was durable for millwork and flooring. In 3 years, the algaid totally wiped out a vast swath of red pine over an area of about 6 counties. It devastated the local economy and left large areas of tortured landscape with little vegetation to hold the soil. Then the hurricane came through, dumping 1.5 feet of rain over the dead forest in just a day and a half. It came just as the corn was starting to set. The flash flood erased everything that wasn't on hilltops and took it into the Cumberland and Tennessee rivers. The Carters, who had been there since the 1730s, had to leave. It was a long walk. Daddy took his whiskey-making skills to Lynchburg, Tennessee, home of Jack Daniel's distillery. He took a job in the mash room. They moved into a rooming house in Sterling Forks. There was no money for any better accommodations. Daddy wouldn't accept charity. Maryanne was walking to school, carrying her new black patent leather Mary Janes with a pair of socks inside them so as not to get them scuffed or dirty. In the Rocky Top, that was normal behavior, as shoes were scarce and expensive, and to her, the Mary Janes were shoes fit for a princess. Except for the shoes and socks, the rest of Maryanne's outfit was homemade from available materials, available in the Rocky Top 70 miles on foot or mule from the nearest store. Few vehicles could traverse what passed for roads in the Red Pines environs, and even fewer had any reason to try. Needless to say that Maryanne attracted a lot of attention. None of it was positive, as children can be very cruel. It got worse when Maryanne tried to express herself. Nobody could understand a word she was saying. It was English, sort of. The dialect is called Southern Appalachian, a rich combination of English of the 1700s mixed with Scottish, Welsh, and Cherokee with a heavy Southern drawl. It was a dialect that hadn't been heard in those environs since Reconstruction. The other children came with their families from somewhere else, like St. Louis, Tampa, Nashville, Atlanta, or Sheboygan, where such a dialect is a foreign language. Eventually, a teacher intervened, but not before the Mary Janes and their accompanying socks were thrown into the top of a large tree in the schoolyard. It was over a month before Maryanne would go to school again. Maryanne refused to speak, except when she heard familiar speech. Maryanne's teacher understood and didn't push the issue. Miss Foster dealt with the same issue when she started school in Lynchburg. Church 4 dilation blues.